Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Cybersecurity discussions between Ideal Integrations, Blue Bastion, and Henderson Brothers. I'm Michael Stratos from Ideal Integrations. I have with me Corey Bussard and Luke McOmie from Blue Bastion, and Dan Coast and Pete Horne from Henderson Brothers. These roundtables are designed to address critical areas of security protocols, risk management, and financing strategies in short segments. Today's topic, zero-click threats. So Luke, Corey, Pegasus spyware was and still is newsworthy. Apple just recently reported some security fixes with its latest iOS update. Where are we with zero-click threats to our mobile devices? And is there a next wave of security incidents that we should be monitoring or looking out for with this?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because zero-click isn't anything new. As we were talking about before the call today, we've seen this for years. Browser-based attacks where we're targeting users, attacks that were coming through Outlook back in the day that were zero-click. This type of approach isn't new. I think that the reason that it's been so impactful, specifically when we talk about Pegasus, is the fact that there are billions of cell phones around the world, and it makes it a very rich target environment when you have something where you can do a zero-click or zero notification type attack via a cell phone. Corey?
Yeah, I agree. And the other thing about the scariness of cell phones, especially, is the fact that they're in your pocket, they're with you at all times. So you might be going into a secure center or a secure area with that device, and now it's connecting to the wireless, and now you can beacon out from that secure location, so to speak. So I agree, Luke. It is definitely a very scary thing. And also, as Luke said, this isn't new. We've been experiencing this. We're still experiencing this. We've probably seen Exchange in the news over and over and over again for things like proxy shell. That's also a zero-click, zero user interactive style attack because it's a remote code execution vulnerability that requires no authentication. So things like that are going to be, zero-click. So I wouldn't say they're new. I would agree with Luke and say that they've been around for a while. But I think it definitely hits home because it's on a much more personal level now.
So I think one thing that would be pertinent to point out here, because I wonder, as we were discussing, how many people out there believe that they still have to click on something for something to occur, right? I would imagine that there are probably a lot of people out there that think you actually have to click on something for an event to occur. And if you get nothing else out of this, that is not the case. If you think that you need to have further conversation about it. So Luke, Corey, what can we do to prevent, detect, and respond to the zero-click attacks?
Patch. Really, it's update your device. When you were told that there is a new update available for your phone, that's most likely happening or being pushed to you because there's some kind of a critical weakness or vulnerability that's been discovered. By updating your phone and your devices, you can stay ahead of the curve with this stuff. Doesn't mean that they're not going to be able to get you with some brand new, fresh zero-day that nobody knows about, but it's going to eliminate 99.9% of the problem out there if you just keep your devices updated.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It's vigilance. It's not just your cell phones either. You could have an iPad that's been sitting on your desk that's been turned off for 2 months or a month or a week or what have you. And then whenever you fire it up, you want to be quick about it. You're just using that thing for this one quick task and you ignore that update. Don't ignore those updates. Those updates, that device now becomes a beacon in your home, in your office, wherever it is located now, because it doesn't have that patch that will stop that zero-click vulnerability. So it's diligence surrounding any device that you have, really. It's ensuring that they're all up to date at all times, or as up to date as you can feasibly make them. That includes things as silly as Luke and I were talking about gaming systems, right?
Smart home devices as well, making sure that you have like auto update enabled for your cameras or for your security sensor at home. All that stuff has to be updated as well.
Absolutely. Those become beacons inside of your environment that an attacker, if they find a remote code execution vulnerability, a zero-click, any of these things, they hit that device. Now they have a device in your network that they own. They control. They can start moving across your network laterally. So ensuring that, and then also one of the big things that we can never forget is backups, ensuring that you have backups, because you're probably thinking about, well, I only have 5 or 6 devices, and then I have a camera system, and then I have this. How do I stay on top of all that? You got to make sure that you have backups in the event that one of those devices in your network slips. And then, let's say it does get compromised. If you have nothing to fall back to, you could lose everything. So that would be the one other major key, is having a backup plan, a disaster recovery plan of sorts in place, so that if and when something like that occurs, you do have an ability to go back to something, because something is always better than nothing.
So in my mind, what I'm thinking right now is that I wanted a new TV, and I can justify it by saying that my old TV can't be patched, and then I'm vulnerable, right?
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. And again, as we're thinking of this, I mean, I know that patching can be time consuming, it can be disruptive, and we get some pushback from people on doing patches to major systems, because it can take hours and you have to take an outage, and it's like, well, do we have to do that? And you don't have to, but understand the potential consequences if you don't, right?
Would you rather schedule an outage or have an outage land on your lap that's disruptive?
Right, unscheduled outage, right? Yeah. With a lot more time involved. Dan, Pete, what should organizations be looking for in their policies definition of a breach, as well as post-incident forensic investigations regarding zero-click events?
Sure. Well, I think the devil's in the details, right? So understanding the current policy forms and language that you have on that cyber policy. We've seen over the years, I guess, some older policy language kind of continually make its way through renewal cycles, and policyholders still having what I would call more archaic language in their cyber forms. And so where the market has really pivoted to is language around potential or suspected breach versus actual breach occurring. And if you have that older language that says that we actually had to have a breach, it could certainly prejudice coverage for the event. So we want to make sure that the cyber policy has language that says suspected or alleged breach in there. That way the policy can respond to these potential threats, right? And so that's what, again, back to understanding, do you have the most current form that is at market where it needs to be? That being said, we're making sure that we're paying attention to current market, because everything that is changing means that the cyber market is going to continually change looking out into 2022 with forms. So we may see more restrictive terms and conditions based on the heightened ransom attacks and things we've seen in 2021. So this is ever evolving. So again, devil's in the details.
Pete, do you have any comments on that as well?
Dan's right on point. I mean, the high profile incidents always have some kind of exfiltration aspect to it. That's what you see in the news, but that's not what a lot of organizations face that ends up creating a debilitating outage for them. So, it's just look at your policy, understand that, you might have ability to make a claim, get some resources, start your forensics, go down that path, even if you're just here on a suspected type of incident. So
yeah, and the whole terminology around incident, the policies don't specify whether it's zero click or we clicked on a link relative to a phishing attack. The policies aren't getting into that detail, especially the type of breach, but it is around that whole concept of actual versus alleged.
So not that it's necessarily part of this, this episode, but what's kind of ringing in my head here is that, okay, things are changing so fast in this arena, especially on the cyber liability side of things. How often should people be reaching out to review that policy just to make sure that something in the industry hasn't changed that potentially affects them, that they should be adjusting to now versus reviewing it at the end of the year or annually as part of your policy renewal?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the type of business that they're in, right? If they're a company that has a technology professional liability component to that versus, a true, cyber policy for a pizza shop down the street, right? So I think it really depends on the nuances of the industry and where the risk profiles are. And, if that business is changing throughout the course of that year, I mean, we're having conversations, for some of our clients that are experiencing significant growth on a quarterly basis, just to understand, what's going on with their business, how is it changing, how would that policy respond based on the changes that are occurring within their business.
So basically start with a, sorry, go ahead, Luke.
Well, I mean, at minimum, right, you're looking at the tech side, you're pushing out a major update, you're doing a patch, you should be looking at, the risk and contractual transfer side of too. I mean, that it doesn't hurt to have every time the tech and IT personnel or outsourced or however your team works in that capacity to start talking to the other side, whether that's a risk manager or some other person that oversees.
And here's something,
insurance policies.
We do a lot of work in the private equity arena, right? And so you've got, these transitions of, small or medium-sized privately held businesses that really, IT and cyber just haven't been on their radar, right? So we've got private equity that are now buying these companies, and they're buying cyber risk too. And so what we see is, these companies tend to be behind the curve on their cyber hygiene, if you will. And so, we're working to build out cyber programs for these businesses that have not had cyber historically, and think about acquisitions as well. As a company is buying another company, what type of risks are they buying? And within a cyber policy, there are acquisition thresholds that are within that policy. So, usually it's a revenue threshold. So, let's say maybe it's 25%. So if that company that they're buying is more than 25% of the acquiring entity, that changes the terms and conditions of the policy and needs re-underwritten. So there's just all these different nuances that you need to be thinking about when there's mergers and acquisitions too.
All right. Lots of good stuff. And as always, hours that we could expand upon it. So any final comments from anybody? Okay.
Run your updates.
Yeah, right. That's it. One just popped up. I'm going to do that right now as soon as we get off. All right. So thanks everybody on behalf of Luke, Corey, Pete, and Dan. I'm Michael Stratos. Be safe.